You're listening to When Veins Meet Like Rivers. Katinniq, okizata, maadawaan. The podcast expanding on the meaning and behind-the-scenes creation of the exhibit by the same name, hosted by the Plug In ICA. It's a podcast about survival, desire, and kinship. It's about the places where we crash and flow into each other. It's about how and what we resist and submit to. I hope that you enjoy our offerings.
I remember being at a film for Cinema Politica and sitting kind of in a couple rows back. And I can't even remember what movie they were showing. Cinema Politica is they do like monthly shows, like really great radical political films, stuff that you're not going to see in theaters. I just remember seeing the back of asinnajaq's head, and you had this super cute, like two braids, but they were like connected together because you just had to be fancy and extra. And I just like loved that. And having this moment of being like, oh, I really want to like introduce myself or say hello, but I also have never met you before or anything. So like working up the courage to do that. But I also kind of realized that I only really knew your Instagram name. Like I had no idea what your name was. And just kind of like mustering up the courage to come down those steps and kind of like come face to face with you and have that kind of like nervous, like, it's almost like you're asking someone out, like every time that I like, especially with friends, every time it almost feels like I'm asking them out on a date, like you like wanting to introduce, and like potentially be friends. So I really enjoyed that sort of thing. And I guess, I don't know, there was just something about you that I was just like, oh, does this bitch know that I'm nervous? Because you're just taking it all in. It was like, you're so serene and calm. But you also have like this kind of like stare, this like really intense stare that really, I noticed it in front of others. It really unnerves them. or when I think it was like when you said your name and you said it so quiet that I had to like kind of lean in, and I was just like, okay, yeah, nice to meet you. I was like, oh shit, I can't repeat. And I just like loved seeing that when I see you introduce yourself to others, because you really make people work. Like you're like, I want you to put some respect on that name. I want you to fumble with it. I want you to, and that's like big asinnajaq energy, is just like this calm little storm that you just bring out in people. So that's my memory of first meeting you.
I feel scared by myself a little bit. Oh, cool. Well, yes, I am asinnajaq, and I remember meeting you too then, and kind of being like feeling awkward and like being with my family, and like you were with friends, and it's like a weird thing of like being with like my mom and brother, and then like seeing someone with like like a group of like young people, and like just like feeling like a divide kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my name is asinnajaq, and I grew up in the suburbs of Montreal, but I'm from Inukjuak, Nunavik, and my mother's name is Carol Rowan, and my father's name is Joby Witaluktuk. And they both do their own cool work. And I have two brothers, Zebedee and Alaturak, and they also do their own cool things. And when I was a kid, we would do cool stuff like driving across the country and swimming in lakes and all kinds of stuff and having fun. And now, personally, I have my own artistic practice, doing filmmaking and curating, and writing whenever I get a chance to. And I'm really personally excited to be in this show with my friends.
I think I met asinnajaq kind of in small circles in Montreal. That's how I met both of you, Dayna and asinnajaq. I was new, but other people had been there for a long time. Like asinnajaq, you're from Montreal, so but everyone kind of knew each other, and there was like this small community of people who had worked together for kind of a while at that point, artists and filmmakers, and but for me, since I was coming in from Concordia, I like met all these Concordia people first. So asinnajaq, I think I met you a little after. I met a lot of the Concordia affiliated people, and yeah, I think I think where we all met at was either after a show that I did or something where my advisor, Jason Lewis, kind of was trying to help me make more friends outside of our lab, and probably was like, tried to get people together after doing a performance. But I think that was that. But I think what's really cool about doing the show is we were all neighbors, and eventually the community is small enough that everyone just gets so like wrapped up in each other's lives. But the thing is, like, it's weird about this time is like what now we know is like a really special time that we met in Montreal is that our careers were like doing something and like really starting to move forward. And so then we all it's like a blessing and a curse. Like we're not like shoving our presences down each other's throats constantly and like totally wrapped up in each other's lives, but like really grateful every time we got to sit down and have a really good meal. And I think when I realized that we were friends, asinnajaq, was when you invited me to your birthday, and you gave me a print, and then I forgot it, and then we had to arrange this like year-long trying to get me the print, and then and it was like at that birthday party at your parents' house and then we were like pinning a bunch of clothespins to our face and eating really good food. And you served moose or caribou. And it was just like and it was like, when you feel like, it's like when you eat them really, really start with, like all my good memories of us are eating and eating really good and drinking really good. And like and I think that's how you're like with our Indigenous like circle of friends is when we've like really had good meals. Like when we've eaten, like one of my favorite memories of us is we were at Larry's and we ended up being there for like 8 hours or something. And we just kept eating and another bottle of wine and another round of food, more friends filtering in. And the waitress came up and said, she looked, it was asinnajaq and myself and Leuli. That was the first kind of group of people who were sat down, and then more people came in. But the waitress came over and was like, I never seen in like a whole table of Indigenous people or something.
Yeah, something
like that. And she meant it. And I mean, it's true. Like you never get. It's probably a very strange sight, and then at a pretty nice, an expensive restaurant, to have us all there. It is rare and special and strange, and something that can only happen at that point in time. A Samoan, an Inuk, and a Lakota walk into a bar, sort of, and then four Métis pop in.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's my asinnajaq.
Korea, Métis, and Nishka, everybody, all the nations. It's like in all nations.
Yes.
Gathering of nations at Larry's.
That's 100% on point, our vibe.
I really love that you bring that up, because I think that's something that like Jason and Skalwanati like really instilled in me right away was this idea of community and like eating together, and how important it is for institutions to have budget so that we can do that together, So because I think that's how a lot of the community was able to like, for us to be introduced to each other, or that the people that were kind of like above us were able to like bring us together and know that that was something that was really important. And I really feel that, you know, because even for the short times that we were, you know, there, like a lot, like, yeah, some of the best memories definitely was over food, you know, and just coming together.
Yeah, doing that. The time, I think when I met Dane, I mean, the same situation for you, Dana, but I remember knowing we were friends when we went to Heather's house for the party, and my nose started bleeding really bad, and you really wanted to take a selfie because you thought it was hot, and I was like, oh, Dana's my friend. Dana's not gonna filter themselves in front of me anymore. I've made it.
Oh yeah, I was like, it was really hot. I still think about that a lot. I love that photo. There's like the pure bliss that you can see in that photo too. I'm like, oh, she weird like me. Okay, she weird.
I think we hung out once though, that like one of the first times we really hung out was we went to Scalinati's opening on Halloween, and you were telling me about your jobs, and strange jobs you had currently, strange jobs you had in the past, and I was dressed as like a weird Sailor Moon character.
Of course.
But yeah, I think those were my memories.
Oh, hey, I guess we could also do our intros. You know, I realized, Kite, like we could just do our little sound bites. Yeah.
Should I do it? No,
you go first, and then I'll go.
Okay.
No, you, no me.
No. Okay, I'll go. So I'll say Hamatakiapi, Zankayamachiapi Kashto, Los Angeles Amataha, Nalaho, Muskogee Creek Reservation, which is Tulsa, Oklahoma. Najajage, LYTA, so kind of live between these three places right now, LA, Tulsa, and Montreal. I'll be very formal and say Nawe Akia Wita Kaida Chiapi, Natawe Akin Dennis Kaida Chiapi, and Nawe Akin Cynthia Friedman at Chiapina, Atawe Akin Matsigal at Chiapi, Unchi Carol Jean Mestas, now Mildred Ferrier at Wichakiapi, Kakalville Stover, now Edwin Seagal at Wichakiapi, Oglala Hamacha, I'm Oglala Lakota, and Chante Washteya Nape to Yuzapo. My relatives, I shake your hands with a happy heart. So yeah, I'm Suzanne, and I go by Kite for making art, and I make a lot of sound art. I make sculptures now. I do installations. I do academic stuff. I am kind of a commentator on AI ethics at this point, and I basically will do anything that seems fun. But yeah, that's so in this sort of show, I'm doing kind of something coming out of my dissertation research. So it's conversations with my family and videos from my aunt's cat's house, and thinking about, you know, the water and kind of the river and the land and water around where my family lives. How about you, Dana? Who are you?
Anin, Dayna Danger, Indigenous, Makwa, Dodem, Métis, Soto, Polish, Nda, so-called Winnipeg, Manitoba, Winnipeg, Treaty 1 territory in Jaba. So yeah, I'm Dayna Danger. I use they, them pronouns. I'm Bear Clan. I was born in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, so-called, but grew up in the northwest end of Winnipeg. My mom is Debbie, and my dad is Marty. My mom is Métis Soto, and my dad is Polish. So it's a very north end type of vibe. Lots of Polacks and Ukrainians that want to get down with the Anishinaabes, with the Crees, the Dakotas, all of them. It's a very specific mix. My great grandmother, Madeline, comes from a place called Camperville. So that's like a historic Métis community. And I believe that like my Polish ancestors came from like the southeast part of Poland. That's about all I know about them, like that. I have one younger sister who is a diver. She's trying to become a lawyer. Was doing environmental science before, so really smart ones, these guys. And yeah, grown up mostly in Winnipeg most of my life, but I'm now currently based in Tiohtià:ke, Haudenosaunee Kainai territory, unceded territory, living right beside the mountain there for almost 9 years now. So that's what brought me to so-called Montreal. And I see myself more as like a visual artist, hand drummer, big drum, knowledge keeper, ceremonial person. I'm part of the Contrary Society in my teachings. And that translates to, I don't know, doing photography and making sculptures and building, like making the most native BDSM things ever sometimes. And, and then just like fucking around with the water sometimes. So it feels good to be back in this area and really understanding the importance of this place. And like why a bunch of people thought that it would be a great idea to build a city in the middle of a flood bed, So, and the flood bed being the Red River and the Assiniboine River coming together in a super sacred space.
Yep. I think that, yeah, it's really amazing to be doing this exhibition and like with you and with each other, but like, because like sometimes it's hard when you're entering like a space that's like you're making it your own, but like there's so much history and so much going on. And sometimes like I feel nervous because I want to like make work that like matters and that like I don't want to step on toes if I don't have to. And it feels really special to like be able to make this with you and to have kind of like to like feel like there's some kind of grounding and to like work together. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, the thinking about like, I mean, maybe asinnajaq, you want to say like how like this didn't happen by accident, how we ended up doing this together, and like, because this was your brainchild.
Yeah, totally. Well, I was invited into the space to make a exhibition with my artwork, and what I thought would be really interesting was to have like my work, but then to expand on my work, not by making more work myself, but to have like other voices come in, because I think like one of the things that I've been thinking about lately is like, I love my opinion. I love sharing my opinion and how I see the world, but like, if that's the only thing presented, then it's like not really growth. And if I want to grow as a person, and if I want to like help other people grow, and if I want to like see the world get interesting, then like only sharing my perspective is like maybe not going to do that. So when I was thinking about my exhibition, I was thinking it would be really cool to have people like, also because like the main artwork of mine is like a Fluxus score, so anyone can perform it. So I thought it will be cool to see other people interpret it or just respond to the artwork in general. So I thought of both of you and invited you into that space. And then we kind of like just over time and like COVID and like just things moving and changing, we got like more space at the gallery, and we were just able to work together with like Allison and the Plug In and decide to like make this like not my show but our show, and to that we decided to all have like artwork that could like kind of like be kin together like we are. And I think that's what we did.
No, I definitely feel that, because like in my practice, I always say that like my work doesn't exist without others, like, and it really doesn't. I really love to be in community with folks when we have like similar values, and that, you know, but like the ideas can come together in different ways, you know. And for me, I always love response based makes me think about call and response in our songs, you know, and how that there's that back and forth, that reciprocity that exists. And, you know, I feel like our art can be quite revolutionary in the ways of us being able to communicate these deeper things that we want to share, that we historically have never been able to be. We don't historically have those spaces. And I think that this opportunity was incredible because we got to all kind of like equally share the stake, meanwhile still respecting the history that got us there, you know, because I really see asinnajaq at the heart of this, like the heart, the intention, all of that. And I really wanted to respond to that, you know, like getting so excited about how we did, like, we, you know, me and asinnajaq did an intimacy piece before where we were in the water and like, and our bodies were flowing together, and just getting an opportunity to work with Kite in a more, like, you know, in a more intimate way. This was like so fun. Like I've never experienced like a gallery kind of setting that really held us, and that how we were able to still see each other, even, you know, despite mental health and COVID and all sorts of stuff that are affecting us, which everyone is going through. I felt like so held during this process because we were able to do those check-ins, and we really kind of saw each other as on this like equal grounding, and like how can we bring ourselves together, what is the push and pull, you know, in these situations too, because sometimes shit's got to get done, you know. And like having that trust in each other is like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to find, I'd say. And it's been such an enjoyable process to see how it's come together and unfolded, you know. Just even myself being like, when I walked into the space, I knew that this color that asinnajaq is using, this Cadillac pink, just like spoke to me. And now it's on one of my stretchers. And your obsession with the rock ancestors, Kite, like they just kept poking up on me. Like I brought all these rocks back from the confluence in North and South Thompson Rivers into Kamloops, or so-called Kamloops, and just noticing how kin out there have held me, and how, you know, I'm bringing these stones, these like ancestors back with me, or even Laurie Blondeau's rocks that were left in the loading dock. I was like, oh, hey, you know, Nishomis, like our grandfathers. I'm like, oh, they're just like hanging out, and just like remember bringing them into the space, and like how all those kind of like quintessential things kind of started to speak to me with, you know, without y'all even speaking to me, you know. And it's just like to be inspired like that, and to have that reciprocity, it's so fruitful.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, I'm having these experiences where I have been very spoiled being in community in Montreal with you all, and very spoiled in Canada, working with curators. I mean, it's not perfect, but I'm from the U.S. and I'm so appreciative of the work that artists who've come before us have done, because I see what 50 years of activism and art making, especially since the 90s, has done for us to be able to do this exhibition. You know, international collaborations and people pushing forward even idea of indigeneity across nations and borders. And so, not to be like self-historicized too much, but when asinnajaq, you proposed this, I was and proposed this as like a exhibition about friends. That isn't like, it's not that it's hard to explain to people outside our circles, and it's even hard to put into words because we're too close to it, what actual Indigenous ethics in art making is. It's because it is indescribable, and English is the wrong language for it. And but what is happening here, I mean, I really hope I get to come see the actual exhibition, because I bet you can feel it in the space. But what is happening here is very rare, and I think very important historically. And I hope that I think that's what I'm glad we're recording and trying to verbalize it, because it is very special and strange. And I'm in other exhibitions where non-Indigenous curators are trying to articulate relationality or relational aesthetics, or communicate objects communicating with humans, or curating multiple people in the same room and then having their works or them really, like, what is actual collaboration across time and space. And if you have to force it, you might not have the right tools to do the job. And and I really do not want to downplay how brutal this year has been for everybody. And this, to even that, I'm very impressed that Allison and team at Plug In was able to pull this off. I'm very impressed that you guys were able to pull this off. I'm very impressed with myself that I got it together enough to pull it off. Because I went and did it. I went and made my piece in South Dakota with my family, and we had a death in the family. I had to scrap my idea completely. Had to redo a bunch. I just had to do it. Just had to go with the flow, you know. But anyway, I mean, I think that all of that, like, I knew when you proposed it that it was something rare, and that and I think that's what's great about the title too, because I really want to talk about the title, because what you guys called, and I decided to go, and I was on one like usual, just like psychologically on one, and you guys called, and I was at some water, I was at a lake, and I was and I had taken up smoking, and I was really on one, and I was like, oh, and it was the week of the announcement of residential schools news. It was a really rough day, but asinnajaq was like, we got to talk, let's talk. And I'm really glad you called and we got on the phone, because the title would, we were like, I'm like, that's what's interesting to me about this exhibition, and that it does not try to it's not trying to create some Indigenous identity, like international identity or something. But it's expressed very easily in it, because sometimes I'm like, oh, well, what brings us together? Is it just oppression? Is it just that we've all of our blood has been spilled on these lands in order for other nations to build themselves? Like, is that really what we have in common, or is it like more than that? Like, our blood doesn't run together because we're suffering together, but because we are flowing together in time. So I love the title.
Me too. I love it. And it feels really right. And right now, just now, the title wall, the vinyl got put up, and it's so cool. Should I send you a picture so you can, did you see a picture?
Send it.
All right.
When veins meet like rivers.
Yes. And then katinniq.
Okizata.
Maadawaan.
And those all mean confluence, right? Or
yes.
When rivers meet?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, confluence. And for this podcast series, my dad told me very, there's like 3 different meanings for katinniq in Inuktitut in Nunavik. And one of them is briefly when you can't tell the difference between the sky and the land, like on the water, for example, when like you can't see the horizon and you can't tell the difference. And then like when you gather as people, so like for Christmas or whatever it is, like when everyone comes together, that's also katinniq. And then it's also confluence when the water comes together. So that's what it means, katinniq in Inuktitut.
I was having a bit of panic about the finding the name too. And I just like think it's so like I love when like you can really hear, like, when you speak to a language speaker, how in depth they can go into it. And I remember being like, it's so last minute. I just go on like a Ojibwe language fix of the day on Facebook. And I just get all these Anishinaabe language speakers being like, giving me the technical way, giving me the slang way, like any sort of way you want it, you got it, and how we come into language is like so interesting and important. Having a way of like that, whoever walks in there, if they speak, then they kind of get this little insider note of like what we're doing, and just also just how powerful that confluence is, here in so-called Winnipeg, because I hear the stories about this was a place where we met. The people from here before knew that this was a place that was like really special and important and would come to visit, but they never stayed here, and there's a couple places that I know in so-called Canada that are very much like that. And just wondering, the other day when I was trying to record the confluence, because I was like, oh, I got all these other sounds. I really want to hear these rivers together. And all I could hear was like, there was the crickets, there was the St. Boniface Hospital, because like right across the river is St. Boniface, which is a Franco-Manitoban community where they all speak French, which is important historically for also the Métis. Louis Riel is like buried right over there in the church, the monastery, allegedly. But just hearing the hum of the hospital and the kind of research center that was beside it. And even though these rivers are super powerful rivers, like you don't swim in them because they will take you. Like they look calm, but once if you get in there, yeah, they're very, very, very powerful rivers. But they were super quiet last night. Like the city really does kind of like drown them out in a way. And it wasn't until I went into the water that all of a sudden these waves started to crash against my feet. And then they started to talk. And I was like, it was weird. It was like really trippy, man. And I ain't all like that. So, I'm definitely like that. I'm all like super natural. I'm like, the water is welcoming me. Oh my God, as it's like hitting against the sand there and like my legs and some of the logs. And that's when I could hear the water, is when it like touches something, when it interacts with whether it's a rock, me, So, there was Canadian geese too, just all honking away. So that was good.
And wild that something that I'm sure would be like roaring can be drowned out by us. It don't feel right sometimes.
Asinnajaq, will you tell us about the water that you referenced in your work?
Yeah, in my work, in my installation, there's a video, and then there's a photograph. And in the video, it's performed in Aotearoa and in like the homelands of my partner, which is near or at Waiho Bay, on like the Bay of Plenty. And the river that I perform in is called Rakokore, I think that's how you say it. And it's like where in the summertime, it's like where we go and like basically like have a shower in the river. You like bring your shampoo and your like body wash, and there's like these like rocks that are in the perfect spot that you like, you know, like you like walk in with everything all in your hands, and then you like place them on the rock and have your like little river shower, which is my favorite thing to do in the summer. But I don't think anyone would ever do it with me in the winter. But I would still do it if actually maybe not, because when I performed this, it was in the winter and it was freezing cold. It's like a 1 minute performance, and like at the end of it, I'm like
just shaking.
You know, like my bones are like clanking together. Yeah. So that's in that river, and like that's like the river that we pass by, like the biggest bridge on the drive home from the city, out back to the coast. So there's that like body of water that's in it. And then the other one that's a photo is it's of a kind of a little waterfall that's in Inukjuak, just like next to the airport. And usually like when I come and go, I always want to like say hi and like bye and like hang out there at least once. And like one time, like I did like glam kind of shots for my cousin, like sitting on the rocks by the waterfall. And I like going there a lot. So that water means a lot to me. And actually, me and my dad talked about this time when I almost died, when we were fishing together, and it's like just a ways up from where that water is in my photo. Yeah. What about you?
That's awesome. The water in mine is, well, the first thing that I was thinking, because first when I was doing this, I didn't think that water was really involved in mine, because you were talking about water, but then I was thinking about just your piece of the score, submit and resist, as more conceptual and not necessarily needing water. And then I was thinking about scores, and my original plan was to have a story, collect a story about my great grandmother Evelyn Stover collecting rocks. And then I was going to take that story, make a design, and have my family members dance the design behind the house. And none of that happened. Instead, I received a story. I asked that was the question I asked, but then it seemed to me that the story that everyone wanted to tell was about my six generations past, my great grandmother Iron Road, and I was thinking about, she named Iron Road after the railroad, because she had to cross the railroad in order to escape from Wounded Knee massacre, and I was thinking about the railroad as a river, maybe like not less of a nice river and more of like a powerful powerful carving object of change through the landscape. But then I went out to go shoot the video for it, and it just never occurred to me, because I don't really see, my favorite part about South Dakota landscape is that you can only tell where water is because that's where the trees are. And so when you drive along the hill, like when you drive on the highway, you can see very low dark green brush, and it looks like they're low bushes, but they're actually tall trees that are set deep in a ravine. And so we had a drone, and we flew it above my aunt's house, because I just wanted to get the field where we were gonna dance. I just wanted to get it. But then when we looked on the screen and we saw what it was looking at, our land goes on includes a stream that we fish, and includes the dam, the Kyle Dam, and then when we turned the camera around, we could see just like a really beautiful long length of trees, and that was like the river flowing towards the house. And but I never see it because I'm on the ground. And so I realized that it was like this, you could see all the streams coming towards the house and coming towards, and I guess I started to think about the submit and resist, so now what's in the exhibition is basically the retelling of Iron Road's path from Wounded Knee to Wounded Knee, and from Wounded Knee home, and there's another little story in there from my aunt Becky Redbow. She was very generous to tell me she's like, side note about stones, because she knows I'm obsessed with stones. Side note, let me tell you about this stone that made me black out and see a vision of a grandmother from probably like 12 generations ago, like something. She had this crazy vision, and wow, but what a crazy! It was just crazy because we couldn't tell the stories we wanted to tell because there'd been the death in the family, but everyone wanted to tell stories around my grandfather anyway. But and we were sitting in the basically on the same spot that 4 or 5 generations had been raising their kids and flowing in and out of, and yeah, but water. It ended up in there.
Yeah, that's so cool how once you get up there, and it looks amazing.
Yeah, and I think for me, the thing that really relates to the water is more that it's like coming home, because I feel like a lot of us that are not really in our homelands, especially because of COVID and all that, haven't been able to like visit and do that stuff that really fuels our energy, getting to see our kin, our constellations of kin, our family. And so for me, it's like thinking about the fluidity of gender, and like that's been like a big part now, I think, of like the work that I'm doing, or just what can that look like, or what does that even mean, and thinking about how sound is a way that I could bring in the water and particular spots that really like speak to me, or also the failure sometimes of technology, because there was a couple of confluences that I really wanted to kind of like record, and the machinery wasn't working, like the thing wouldn't turn on. Apparently I started the Zoom recorder and I was just walking around taping over other stuff. Like it just wasn't working out. And then it was kind of one of those things where it's like, it wasn't meant, you know what I mean? It was like those realizations of like, that there's consent from the confluence. The confluence is also saying like, no, not this time. Even though I went back to that one confluence twice, it was still like, no, it was a different intention. I needed to visit it because I did a performance at the North and South Thompson River confluence with Jeffrey McNeil Seymour, who's Shequemic from Kamloops there. And just like when there was a salmon moratorium, we did a two-spirit ceremony for that. And it's so interesting how art has been the vehicle for me to connect with other, people under the two-spirit umbrella, whether you identify as two-spirit or not, like whatever that is, like under that big umbrella of all of our different names or no names of understanding gender and gender fluidity and gender within our different communities, and being able to share that, to then come back and bring that into the space, and just thinking about my own sort of like understandings in like ceremonial spaces or in cultural spaces of like kind of the erasure that two-spirit people often feel in these spaces, and just wanting to kind of let art be the thing that helps me work through those feelings of when when things don't make a lot of sense, or when you're denied something in ceremony and you're trying to be respectful, but you just can feel yourself being erased out of the space. It's kind of like we're asinnajaq were talking about this earlier, like we're making our own space. We're making those spaces to heal, and to work through these hard legacies that our people have had to go through. Like I don't outrightly project blame or that on the homophobia and transphobia in our communities. I know that that's because of another way of being that told them that this was wrong, and made them really afraid of us owning our sexuality, of us owning like who we are. That's not what they wanted. So, we kind of feel those legacies. And I think, yeah, that's like, I am water, I am fluid, I produce fluids, all sorts of types. And I think that's like what's really exciting to me, whether it's like a bloody nose or like a squirt fest at a like play party, it doesn't even matter. I'm going to bring it all in together. It's all that different way is valid. And working with those connectors too, and thinking about too, how the water connects us, of how we used to, especially for my people, how we used to travel was we relied heavily on the streams and the rivers and the connections to bring each other where we needed to go. Métis people would probably not exist without this confluence. It was really important for us as fur traders, as trappers, as fishers that's our livelihood, so, and how, like, if you follow any sort of stream, you can probably find it, all of a sudden end up in anybody's sort of territory. Yeah.
I just wanted to bring up something before I forget, which is about, I'm coming from a sound perspective, but like there's a listening component to this. I think it's because of the score and like beginning from this impulse of performative action, but I kept reading it, or I still see it as like a listening action, like going out there to listen to the water. Like we all did this. We all seem to like approach this stuff as an excuse to listen to each other, or in my piece, I wanted an excuse to listen to a story. You want an excuse to go listen to the water. I interviewed Zoe Todd and their collaborator A.M. Kassinger, and they were talking about times that they felt that they did not have permission to do a field recording, going out to land and saying, and the land made it clear, like, not today, like you need to sit here for a long time with me, or I don't know you, or the story isn't for you, like, and it's another big, huge difference between all the arts we've made for this piece and this collective like project and collaboration, as opposed to if other non-Indigenous folks were making this kind of work, is different ethically.
Yeah, I think it's been really important, especially with like the incredibly difficult, to say the least, season that we've been having. Just like emotionally draining. Hard news after hard news. Like there's no space to recoup to feel better. And I've just been so grateful, like from Allison and the Plug In, to have space to like not do things in a certain time, and to have the trust and to give each other space, because it's like to alleviate the pressure of having to like give something when you have no energy. It's just like allowed everything to happen in a way that like feels good.
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't know if Allison is listening, maybe, but I remember when we had the first meetings with Allison, I was like, we don't need this much flexibility, or we don't need all of this. Like it won't be necessary, this much mercy. and then of course by the end I was like, oh, this is one of many, many projects I'm doing. This is the only one I feel actual, I feel like good about, because that much space is probably necessary for all projects, but this one especially, I'm very grateful for that.
Nakonik.
Yeah, get you miigwech, bitch.
Well, maybe that's a great introduction to this When Veins Meet Like Rivers.
We're so smart. Smart as a river.
We're smart. Our rivers are smart. My family is so smart.
Oh, Kite, but for real, Kite, you're so smart.
No, you're so smart.
I think I was on the record today as you being the most talented person that I've ever met.
Yeah, let me just chop liver over here. Fuck.
Yes, you are definitely chopped liver.
Put some onions on me. I'm ready.
Oh my God.
You're cute too, Dayna.
I try. I always like to chop.
What are you beating? What are you beating?
So I'm filling in the words now.
What did you say?
Apachiko Gizawanaman, which, loosely translates to like, I love you forever and eternity, It's like eternal. Because that was like one of the first things that when Adrian was learning, started doing their language course, that was something that they sent me, and I was like trying to be like super cool about it. I'm like, I have no idea what it said. So I was like, I don't even know, like, you know what I mean? So I like went to say, what's it called? I sent it to my friend Amanda Roy, who knows the language really well. And then she sent it to her auntie, and then her auntie's like, oh, someone must really like you then. And then I found out, and I was able to send a response back too.
Cute.
Dayna, do you want to close off the episode? You do it.
Should I do that? How do we say it? Bum a piece? That's what Cedar Eve taught me, is like, that's what the youth say now. Bum a piece. Yeah. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. Guys just laughing in the background.
It's a great day to be Indigenous. Yeah. Bum a piece.
It feels like a great day to be Indigenous. Thanks for listening. Bum a piece. When Veins Meet Like Rivers is hosted and recorded by Asinnajaq, Dayna Danger, and Kite. Our intro and outro song is an original score produced by Kite. Podcast art by Asinnajaq. This podcast is presented by Plug In Institute of Contemporary Art. You can find a link to the Plug In website in our show notes. We are produced by Collective Broadcast Co., an artist-run collective specializing in tech and live stream solutions. You can find the link to their website in our show notes. This episode is supported by Plug In ICA's generous donors, including the Directors Circle, Canada Council for the Arts, the Manitoba Arts Council, the Winnipeg Arts Council, and MB150. It's a great day to be Indigenous. Bum a piece.